Welcome to the Offutt School Presents series. I'm Chris Mason, and I've got the honor of leading the business school at Concordia. And we've got a great program this morning, and I'm delighted to say we've got Michael Happe and Brian Hughes, both from Winnebago Industries, who are going to be Brian's going to be the moderator, Michael's going to be the featured speaker today, and I think you'll find it very interesting. From the beginning in 2012, the Offutt School of Business has focused on four main things: ethical decision-making, transformative leadership, entrepreneurial mindset, and a global focus. And looking at the growth we've had has been, compared to most in the education market, much quicker. So we had record enrollment of 475 last fall. In 2012, we started at about 212. We've got 562 majors. We've got two brand new programs coming on. One is entrepreneurship, which is extremely innovative, and I think it's got the potential to be our largest program. We also have a collaboration between the business school and the art department in a minor focused on web design. That's not often done in academics, and it's been interesting to see that. The last thing that we've done this year that's pretty significant is we created a new standard and a foundation from a quantitative standpoint. We had too large of a gap between those that were quantitatively focused and those that weren't so much. And so every business student now going forward is going to have a business calculus course, business statistics, and data analytics. And those three things, the foundation, will really take them into what they need going forward 2019 and beyond. And so that's exciting to see as well. I'd also like to thank our sponsors today. We've got a number of great sponsors that are consistently with us in this program: Ballard Spar, LLC, the Boulay Group, Commerce Bank, Fontis Investments, Hot Dish Advertising, the Norway House, RDO Equipment Company and RDO Integrated Controls, U.S. Bank Wealth Management, Winnebago Industries, and not least, Wells Fargo. So before we begin our breakfast, I'd like to call on Dr. William Kraft, President of Concordia, to give an additional welcome.
Good morning. It's wonderful to see you all, and I want to add my welcome to Michael and to Brian. 1991 Concordia graduate, right, Brian? So we're so glad to have Winnebago here. Thank you all for coming, and thanks to all of our sponsors and to everyone who has gathered here this morning. Welcome all of you to this key Twin Cities expression of Concordia College. My role this morning is to introduce the Reverend Thomas Pfotenhauer, Senior Pastor of Woodbury Lutheran, who will provide our invocation in just a moment. Before I invite Tom to the podium, let me say a word about Lutheran ecumenism. So hang on, it's early in the morning, but this is a little bit of Lutheran inside baseball for you. So among the founders of Concordia College in 1891, ecumenism might well have meant the Norwegians and the Swedes trying to get along with one another. This is more difficult than you might imagine here in 2019. In the very earliest days of Concordia College, we had a literary society, and we had a very formal occasion, and the Swedes of Hope Academy in Moorhead, not invited to this occasion, by the way, burst in, and they began calling us names. Corn cobs, they shouted. Vasken de ha, which means what do they want? And they answered, lutefisk and lefse, ja. By the way, we found those Swedes at a nearby pond on the way back to Hope Academy. I won't tell you what happened to them in the pond, but that's a very early commerce story, and I'm glad to tell you, by the way, that just this last weekend, my wife Ann and I worshiped at Mount Olivet Lutheran without incident. So over the years, of course, in the United States, there have been Norwegian and Swedish and Danish and German expressions of the Lutheran Church. And I'm so pleased that this morning we have Tom Pfotenhauer here with us, a living example of pan-Lutheran ecumenism in his life and in his family. Tom's father and brother are Lutheran Church Missouri Synod pastors. His uncles represent Lutheran ministry expressions from the Wisconsin Evangelical Synod to the ELCA, which is the branch that Concordia College belongs to. Tom, in fact, represents the 12th generation serving in ministry in his family. In similar fashion to the church, as many of you knew, colleges and universities of the Lutheran tradition generally try to work together across those divisions. And this goes well, except occasionally, as some of you in the room know, there can be confusion from the multiple Concordia colleges in the United States. All of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod colleges are called Concordia. And of course, I'm the president of the Concordia College in Moorhead, Minnesota, so there can occasionally be some difficulties. We are part of that group of colleges that belong to the ELCA, St. Olaf, Luther College, Gustavus, and others, but from time to time there can be some confusion. For example, one significant estate gift that was penned for Concordia College in Moorhead went to Concordia University in Portland. I'm very happy to say that they sent the check to us back after not too much of an argument, but the cornucopia of Concordias, I worked on that pun, by the way, has been something that has defined Lutheran higher education in the United States for many, many years. And so it's a pleasure to have someone who belongs to that larger brother and sisterhood of the Lutheran Church with us here this morning, a church leader of faith, a church leader of vision, Tom Pfotenhauer. Would you please join me in welcoming him here this morning?
So I graduated from a warmer Concordia in Irvine, California. So maybe that is the Concordia, but we won't argue. Thank you, President Kraft. It's certainly a blessing to be here with you all today. And as I was thinking about the invocation, my mind went to this great scene of Jesus and his disciples. And we know that his disciples sometimes didn't quite get it, right? And so Jesus had just told them that he was going to suffer and die, and then they got into an argument, some of you know this, about which one of them was the greatest. And Jesus looked at him and said, if you want to be great in my kingdom, you have to learn to be the servant of all. And I look out here in this room today, and I see lots of leaders, people dressed up nicely. I forgot my tie this morning. And I see people who are making an impact in the world. And I feel like, wow, we can make change in this world. And a lot of that starts with you as leaders and taking on this idea that you're going to find greatness not in all the things that you accomplish, and you're going to accomplish a lot of things, but you're going to find greatness by the way that you learn to serve others. And so my prayer for us today and every day is we would learn to follow Jesus and find greatness in the way that we serve others in the same way that he has served us. Let's pray. Father, we are so grateful that you sent your son Jesus into our lives as the ultimate servant. He didn't come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom, even for people like us here today. And so my prayer is that by your Spirit, Lord, that same idea would make its way into our hearts as we lead, as we seek to be great in this world, that we would find that greatness in serving others. Lord, I'm so thankful for the food that we're going to eat here in a moment. It reminds me of those around this world that don't have a lot to eat, and maybe we can help out with that. So use us, Lord, to bring your love and mercy and grace into this world more and more. Thanks for the leaders that you have gathered here today, and for those who will be speaking. I pray that your Holy Spirit would fill them and that we would be encouraged and challenged today and by their words. And so now we give this day to you to honor you and your son Jesus. In his name we pray. Amen. I think we're going to eat now. Is that right? All right, cool.
So I hope you enjoyed your breakfast, and as we begin our program, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our conversation moderator, Brian Hughes, and our featured speaker, Michael Happe. Brian's a 1991 graduate of Concordia, where he majored, in business and accounting. In that order, I think. Before joining Winnebago, Brian spent a little over 21 years in financial leadership at Ecolab, where his last post was Vice President and Corporate Controller. In 2017, Brian joined Winnebago Industries and is now the CFO. Leveraging his experience from a variety of senior leadership positions over 19 plus years at Toro, Michael Happe was named President and CEO of Winnebago Industries in 2016. And we were wondering at our table if, with all the snow, there was a little bit of desire to be at Toro again and selling snowblowers. But I thought I would much rather be in a warm Winnebago than blowing snow. So we figured that was a good choice. After he took over, he certainly hit the ground running and made a number of significant changes. In less than 2 years, he enhanced and changed his leadership team, moved the executive offices from Iowa to Eden Prairie, and made a major acquisition of Grand Design RV, which was an important acquisition to their towable portfolio. Industry analysts have described Michael's early efforts as a leadership-driven transformation, where he brought a fresh perspective and a mandate to rethink what Winnebago can be. We're pleased to have Michael with us today to discuss strategic and cultural transformation within that iconic company. Please join me in welcoming Michael Happe and Brian Hughes.
Thank you. Sorry. Good morning. Good morning. Mike is working, it sounds like. Mike, are you on as well?
I think I am. Yeah.
All right, great. Well, thanks for having us. It's our pleasure to be here and talk a little bit about the Winnebago journey that Mike is leading us on and help you get to know a little bit about Mike's leadership style and ideally as a person as well. And so that's kind of where I want to start, Mike, is instead of at the end, have them tell some personal things. Let's do that up front. And my goal today is that the Winnebago team here learns something a little bit new too. I'm sure that a lot will sound familiar to the team, but let's dig a little bit deeper. So I was Winnebago's legacy location, I think, as many of you know, in northern Iowa in Forest City. And you're no stranger to Iowa. Why don't you talk a little bit about your upbringing down in the state of Iowa, where you grew up,
Sure.
And a little bit about your childhood memory.
Well, first of all, good morning. It's really a tremendous honor to be here, and so thank you for the invitation. Before I answer your question, Brian, I just want to make a couple comments about you specifically. So,
That's not on the.
yeah, I know it's not on the agenda. I figured if I didn't get to it now, then I may not get to it later. But we do have a Winnebago table here, so thank you very much for the team. And I have some personal friends in the room that are here as well. At Concordia, you should be very proud of Brian Hughes. He is a tremendous person, first of all, and I think we'll talk a little bit, I think, about the type of culture we are trying to build at Winnebago. But Brian embodies every single piece of the culture that we're trying to build at Winnebago. A balance between people and performance, but someone who is a values-based leader. And as Pastor Tom talked about with sort of the concept of servant leadership, Brian is just that. I think he truly is a servant leader. And so I'll just say that at the beginning, that you all at Concordia should be extremely proud to have Brian Hughes as an alum of your institution, because he's not only making a difference in the world professionally, but he's a great role model for others that he touches. So,
Thanks, Mike.
thank you. I had the opportunity to grow up in northwest Iowa, a town named Sioux City, Iowa. If you look on the map and you see Iowa, Nebraska, and South Dakota come together, it's right on the Missouri River. I grew up there. It's a town of probably 80 to 100,000 people. My parents still live down there, oldest of 4 children. One of my sisters lives in town as well, and I'm sure we're all fiercely proud of where we grew up here in the country, but Sioux City was a very safe and good place to grow up, and you know, Northwest Iowa is a neat part of the country, and little did I know, sometime in my professional career I would have the chance to come back and make a difference with an Iowa-based organization like Winnebago Industries.
Yeah. And any high school activities that you could share with us? I always love to hear the stories of high school and the things that you engaged in.
Yeah, it's funny. Sometimes you look back at your high school experience and there are things you appreciate about the person you were, and then there are some things that you go, oh. No, I think it was a pretty normal, childhood experience. I mean, I was active in sports in high school, but I was also active in music, in theater, in speech, student council. So it was a well-rounded experience, and I'm not Lutheran, but I am Catholic, and I went K through 12 with a Catholic education, and I think that's important, for my life, is that values were instilled in me by my parents first and foremost, but also by the environment around me, in terms of the faith-based academic organizations I was growing up in at an early age. And I think you can get a great education in a private or a public institution, but I think the values-based cultural philosophy has stayed with me my whole life. So.
Yeah, great. And I know that family is a priority for you. I see that in how you interact with me, and then the priorities that you show us at work, being at home. Talk a little bit about your family, if you would. I know you have 4 kids, but maybe share the age ranges and some of the things they're into.
Well, the rock star it starts with is my wife, Shannon.
Yeah.
Shannon's a native of the Twin Cities. She grew up in Prior Lake. We met at the University of Kansas as undergrads in Lawrence, Kansas. And I am in the Twin Cities almost solely because she moved back here after college, and she was the one, or at least I thought she was, and I'm glad she agreed with that. But we have 4 children, a son who's 20 and a junior in college. We have a high school senior son as well. We have a daughter who's 15, and she's a high school freshman, and we have our 4th and final child, Sean, is a 7th grader, and he just turned 13 last Friday. And so it's a very busy family life. Shannon, again, is just tremendous. I mean, the phrase that you married up is absolutely true for me. She does a tremendous job with the quantity of time she gives to our family as the leader of our home. And my job is probably more quality in some cases instead of quantity, but we work very hard to, give the kids a good, centered, again, values-based, life, and I'm very proud of them. And a lot of our free time is spent through their activities and their experiences right now.
Yeah, sounds familiar. My wife, Kim, is with me here today, and she's a mentor to a mentee here sitting at our front table, and she likewise. She does amazing things with the family, so thank you, Kim, for that. Yeah. Any favorite activities that you and your family enjoy doing together?
Well, again, right now it's all about the kids' activities. Yeah. When we do have a chance to get away, we have a lake place up in Nisswa, Minnesota, on Lake Hubert up there. So that has become a favorite destination, over the past summers. And one of the things I'm sure we'll talk about here at Winnebago Industries is our business, as you know, Brian, is really about family and friends having tremendous experiences in the outdoors. And that's becoming more and more prevalent in our family as well. And for us, our lake place, as I know for you and Kim, you also have a cabin in the area up there. It's just a great place to come together. The anxiety and the worries about everyday life seem to kind of go on hold when you're in those environments.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Let's transition to the early part of your career and start to get to know you from a professional standpoint. So, as was introduced to the audience here, Mike spent the majority of his growing up at the Toro Company, a great company here in the Twin Cities. Talk about, if you would please, how you landed at Toro, how you found each other, and then maybe a couple of those formative experiences early in your career that created the leader that you are today.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, Toro, I mean, we're in Bloomington, I think, technically, and it's Toro's over on 82nd and Lyndale in Bloomington. I have an MBA from the University of Minnesota and the Carlson School of Management, and I've joked before that I chose to go back and get my MBA when I was very young. I was 23 years old when I started my MBA process. My undergraduate degree's in journalism. I was one of those guys that wanted to be an anchor on SportsCenter, or something like that. It did not turn out that way. And there are days I wish it had, but I went back to grad school for business at a very young age, and I've joked with people that when I walked into class, literally class the first day, and started to meet people, and the term, the acronym SEC was used. I thought it was the Southeastern Conference. True story.
Pretty excited about it,
I
suppose.
was. I was like, when's football start? And it was the Securities and Exchange Commission, and I'm not sure I really want anything to do with them either right now. But no, I mean, and the reason I start there when you ask me about Toro is I was fortunate enough to be able to get an internship with Toro between my first and second years at the Carlson School, and had a great experience during the internship, and came out of grad school with a couple job offers, one of them being Toro, and just found I was enamored with the culture, and I thought it was a place where you could learn by doing. And boy, there's probably several nuggets of advice to give some of the students here today, but one of them is, there's nothing that beats experiential learning. When somebody allows you the opportunity to do something with your minds and your hands, that's when you learn. And you might not always succeed during that experiential process, but boy, you'll sure learn lessons. So I spent 19 years at the Toro Company full time. 20 of you include the internship, and every 2 to 3 years, was very fortunate to have somebody knock on the door of my cubicle or my desk or my office and say, Mike, we've got a different experience or challenge we'd like you to take on for our company. And I think part of life is just showing up and working hard. And so it's a great high quality brand and high quality small cap company here in the cities. And again, what was beneficial for me heading into the Winnebago experience eventually was just the philosophy around a values-based culture. I worked for two great leaders as CEOs during my time there, one named Ken Melrose and another one named Michael Hoffman. And they were different leaders, but they shared common philosophies around servant leadership, around a values-based organization where the purpose meant something, where you put employees first, even ahead of your customers, because if you care for your employees, even greater than your competitors care for their employees, then you're going to win, because they're going to take care of your customers. And so it was a fascinating company to work for, but more than anything, it was a great culture to grow up in professionally.
So a huge decision to leave that great company where you obviously built up a lot of personal equity over the years, and were a great leader there. To come to Winnebago was a big decision. What prompted that decision, and what were some of those things that excited you most about this opportunity to lead Winnebago?
Boy, there were a number of things probably at play, Brian, on that. And Toro was going through a succession process for the CEO position. Mr. Hoffman had decided to rightfully retire after a great career, and I was humbled to be a part of that succession candidate process, and did not get the CEO position. A very good close friend of mine, Rick Olson, now leads Toro, and he's tremendous. And Rick, I think is the right leader for Toro these days. But Yeah, that was fall of 2015, and it caused me after 20 years to really reflect on what I wanted to do. I was, around 44 years old at the time, and I wasn't looking for anything when the call from a recruiter representing Winnebago came in, but I was contemplating, how I could continue to, grow professionally, and in that case, probably, at that time, help Toro in the future. But I received a call from a headhunter in fall of 2015. I was walking into a freshman high school football game for one of my kids, and I rarely answer the cell phone if I don't recognize the number. But for some reason, I picked the phone up as I was walking into the stadium, and it was a recruiter who said, Mike, we'd like to share a opportunity with you. It's a CEO position in Iowa. And, I had been in the Twin Cities for a couple decades, and I told the lady on the other end of the line, if it's in Iowa, I'm just not interested. My family is still young, and we're here. And she said, well, I'd like to tell you two things. I'd like to tell you the name of the company, and I'd like to tell you that their headquarters are 2 hours away from your front door because I've Google mapped it. And so after she said that, she said, it's Winnebago Industries. And the brand name just hit me like a ton of bricks immediately. We are so blessed at Winnebago to have one of, I think, America's most iconic business brands. In many ways, it is a Kleenex or a FedEx, a Xerox of our industry. But I knew the brand, and she said, I'd love to tell you the story of why they're looking for somebody outside. And I said, can I call you back, obviously, later? And so I began a process to learn about the company. And really what, I suppose I decided to come to Winnebago for two reasons. One, certainly a personal opportunity to develop as a leader and a chance to lead an organization and have accountability for that. But also it was a chance, almost a Harvard business case chance to help restore greatness to an American iconic brand. Winnebago had lost its way a little bit. Still many good things about the company when that phone call came in, but it was a little bit tired, and it had lost sort of a purpose. And it was one of those, I don't know, once in a lifetime opportunities to help restore a jewel to hopefully even better form going forward.
Yeah. And the board made the decision in coming to you to go to an outside CEO. And I think that was a change in direction for them as well, and also a big decision. Talk about what, from your perspective, led them in that direction to go outside the company, and then talk about the expectations that they communicated to you as you were talking to them about joining.
Yeah, Winnebago is 61 years old as we sit here today, founded in 1958. Its headquarters are in Forest City, Iowa, which you go down I-35 about an hour and 45 minutes, and you take a right or go west on Highway 9, and you find your way into Forest City, Iowa. It's a town of 4,100 people. 900 or so of the 4,100 citizens work for our company, which means the other 3,200 in that area are very close friends or family members of the 900 that work for us. I had never been to Forest City, Iowa. I had been to some communities around it, Mason City, Clear Lake. And for the majority of the first 6 decades, I think the company had done well, with the ability to draw talent from that community or to that community, but it had become increasingly a challenge in the decade before, my arrival at the company, your arrival as well. And the board was looking, I think, for an outside voice to come in and to be a catalyst for change in the right direction. And one of my favorite quotes, one I learned from Mr. Hoffman at Toro, was a Winston Churchill quote, which generally says something to the degree, there is nothing wrong with change so long as it is in the right direction. And I think the board was looking for change in the right direction, and they looked at their internal roster of great people, but just didn't see the right fit. And they also, I think, wanted to find somebody from a larger market that could recruit additional talent to the organization. And so whether they found somebody from the Twin Cities or Des Moines or Chicago, they wanted to put a flag in the ground in a larger market so that we could start to attract, even more talent to the company to help take us forward positively. So, I think the board deserves credit at that time for making a tough call to go outside the company for leadership. That doesn't always work, and in fact, my preference would be someday that we find the next CEO of Winnebago Industries inside the company, but there are times when organizations, don't maybe have that right leader there.
Yeah, and they gave you 3 mandates.
They did.
And why don't you talk through for the audience what those mandates were?
Yeah, so Winnebago, 61-year-old company today, we operate in the recreational vehicle industry, and that's a pretty big industry in the U.S. There's about $18 billion of product sales. And there's probably about $28 billion of other adjacent sales around the RV business. And so it's a big business here in the United States. Almost 500,000 RVs are sold a year. Winnebago, for as great as its brand was, had less than 3% share in January of 2016. Think about that. Less than 3% share with our brand. Number 1 brand awareness, but we had a close rate issue. People would come into a dealership asking to look at a Winnebago and they'd walk out with another brand. And so the board wanted to change that. Our legacies in motorhomes, those units that you drive, you can drive a 45-foot diesel or you can drive a 20-foot smaller motorhome. So they gave me 3 priorities, as Brian said. One was restore leadership to our motorhome business. We had fallen from number 1 to number 3, and they said we want to compete for leadership again. Number 2, restore or become relevant and competitive in the towable segment. So here's a Cliff Clavin fact of the morning. 87% of the units in the RV industry are those units that you can tow behind your vehicle, called towables. They range from travel trailers to fifth wheelers to toy haulers. 87% of the units and 75% of the dollars are in towables. We had less than 1% share of the towables category. And we compete in an industry with 2 big gorillas, Thor Industries and Forest River. Forest River is owned by Berkshire Hathaway. Thor Industries is a public company. They had at the time around 85 to 90% share of the RV business, a true oligopoly in our industry. We had less than 3% share overall, and we had less than 1% share of towables. And they said, Mike, we got to start competing in towables because they're kicking our butt, and they're using those profits to hand us our lunch on motorhomes as well. The third priority was we would like you to pursue profitable growth and diversification. And here's why they said that is RVs, if you don't know, are highly cyclical. We are on the razor's edge going into a recession and coming out. And it can have devastating impact if you don't manage it correctly. In 2004, Winnebago's revenue was $1.1 billion. In 2009, it was $211 million. An 85% decline in revenue. It was a near-death experience. And it's amazing that the company leaders kept the company alive at the time. They did not go bankrupt. They did not get acquired. They did not have activist investors join the board. They made very difficult decisions to turn working capital into cash and candidly ask a lot of good people at the time in North Iowa to go home for a while. And, a tremendous, but the board didn't want to go through that near-death experience, and they wanted to see if we could diversify into some other things that would be good to mitigate some of the cyclicality, but at a minimum, give us some more profitable revenue streams for the future. So those were the 3 priorities, and that's really what, Brian, that we've been hard at work at now for the 3 years I've had the privilege of being at Winnebago to try to bring to life. And, it's pretty simple directives, harder to bring to life sometimes.
Right, and they certainly will bring about this transformation that we're talking about. And so as you came into the role and you started talking to the people inside the company, wandering the halls and having these conversations, you probably saw some things that you really liked that you wanted to hold on to. And you probably started to see some of the hurdles to that transformation too. Maybe talk about that balance, those things that you identified as, we got to keep these things. These are the good parts of our 60-year history. But then talk about some of those hurdles, if you would, too.
Yeah, I think that's one of the delicacies of coming in as an outsider to an organization, that you don't know the history. It's sometimes that's a blessing, and that sometimes it's a curse because you don't have the context. What I found was an organization that was extremely hardworking, did have great Midwestern, values. They were respectful, treated each other well, did care about our customers, showed up, worked hard. But what I didn't find at the company early on that was blessed to have at Toro was a North Star. And one of the reasons I almost didn't take the job at Winnebago Industries was because I couldn't see a vision, mission, purpose document. There was no guiding light for at the time we had 2,700 employees. Today we have almost 5,000. But I couldn't see what 2,700 employees, the hymnal they were all singing off of. And even our values weren't written down on paper. And so that concerned me because I was like, wow, how do we all start going in the same direction? Whatever we decide to do in the future, we've got to get people to care about why we come to work every day. Yeah, we weld and we paint and we bend metal and we create these homes on wheels, but why are we really coming to work? Why should you care to be a Winnebago employee? And so within the first, 4 or 5 months, we started a process to create vision and mission statement version 1.0. And it was not me saying this is who we're going to be. We asked our employees to get involved. We had several sessions with different employees, and we very carefully chose the words that we now put up on our walls and on our website and say, this is who we are. And our purpose is to create or is to enable extraordinary experiences in the outdoors as our customers travel, live, work, and play. You will not see the words recreational vehicles on our vision document. 97% of our sales today come from recreational vehicles. But we have a dream now to become a premier global outdoor lifestyle company. And we're going to be dang good at RVs, better even than what we have been. But we're also going to look at some other ways to grow as a company. And that golden thread emotionally is going to be family and friends in the outdoors having tremendous experiences using our products. Yeah. And so that's what we had to create, because if you don't create something like that, you'll spend your time turning over rocks, finding opportunities for improvement, and just being consumed by fixing that. And I guess it's my job as I guess the CEO at the company to always kind of keep us centered on a higher vision, a higher purpose. And that document included our values and our guiding beliefs, how we treat each other, how we treat our customers. And so again, it's a little bit of, Dilbert, when you look at some of those documents, but they matter. I would imagine President Kraft has some similar words on a piece of paper or on the website that say, this is who we are. This is who we aspire to be. And I think that's important if you're gonna turn around a big ship like Winnebago and turn it in a new direction. You got to get people to be motivated and emotionally engaged in why they would come along and where we're trying to go.
Yeah, good. A key milestone in the transformation, and it gets to that second mandate that you talked about, which is to make us, or to explore whether this towables business could be part of the Winnebago portfolio. Yeah. Not long after you started, an opportunity was presented. Right? Talk about that grand design, the early stages of that opportunity, and what you think enabled that to come to life for us, right, and to complete the purchase of Grand Design.
Yeah, we've had a couple of transformative moments or events in the last 3 years, but what Brian is referencing is the acquisition of a company called Grand Design RV. And so if you remember, that second directive from the board of directors was you got to become relevant and competitive in towables. Grand Design RV is a company that formally started around late 2012, early 2013, and has grown from $0 in 2013 to almost or around $1 billion as we sit here today in 6 short years. We were approached by an investment bank in summer of 2016 that Grand Design was going to be available for sale. And would we be interested as a strategic bidder in that process? And we were, because we were, to some degree, we were fighting for our survival. If we didn't figure out how to compete in towables, we might have had to raise the white flag someday, in terms of the RV business. But we got to know the Grand Design guys, and what we started to share was our beliefs around the type of company they were building and the type of company we were building at Winnebago, and why a marriage, an acquisition would make sense. And, it made sense for us. When we look at acquisitions, we use 3 lenses: strategic, financial, and cultural. And I'm not sure any one is more important than the other. They're all important. And if we can't check the box on this is strategically the right thing to do, it's financially accretive, and the way we acquire it, is financially smart. But culturally, we can see this thing being integrated into our broader parent culture. If we can't check the box on all 3 of those, then no mas, we're out. And fortunately for Grand Design, we were able to check the box in all 3 ways. And we paid $522 million in a combination of stock and cash for a company that at the time was doing about $475 million of revenue. In the 2 years, or about 28 months since we bought them, they've more than doubled their annual sales. And fortunately, we probably have gotten a pretty good start to a return on Grand Design, but it's allowed us to immediately gain share in towables. And we've been standing up, as you know, Brian, a Winnebago branded towables business as well. But it created an immediate sense of credibility within the industry as well, that, you know what, we're here to play. We're here to restore greatness to, I think, our core motorhome business, but we're also going to compete on the towables arena as well. And so our stock price that day went from $23 to $30 on one day. And as an acquirer, as a public company acquirer, the amount of times you see your stock go up 25% as the acquirer is very rare. And so, fortunately for us, the market voted that day that good move. The market isn't always that kind.
Yeah, that's right. And it's proven itself time and time again since that as well. And I think culture was a big part of why they came to you and decided to join the Winnebago family and sell to Winnebago. And in fact, we haven't lost a single member of management yet in the 2 years that we own them.
We're proud of that. We have to keep working to make sure that stays the same, but we are very proud that they've stayed with us.
Yeah, so. And they're a big part of our overall success, certainly. Back to that cultural question, you had asked the leadership team to read a book by Patrick Lencioni called The Ideal Team Player. Yep. What was it about that book that you thought would have impact in Winnebago and in the framework that he introduced? What do you think it is about that framework that will contribute to our success in the future?
Yeah, I hope many of you are familiar with Lencioni's work. One of the books that I was asked to read, 10 or 15 years ago, was the 5 dysfunctions of a high-performing team. And, Pat's most recent book is one called The Ideal Team Player. And he describes, when you're putting together a team, what are the characteristics of the individual employees or teammates on that team? What are you looking for? And he uses a very simple philosophy: hungry, humble, and smart. And real quickly, in the spirit of time, I'll try to describe it. But hungry is, are you driven? Are you independently motivated? Do you strive to be the best, that tomorrow's work is going to be better than the work that you did yesterday? So that's hungry. Humble is more about your ego. Is it It's the fact that the name on the front of the jersey is more important than the name on the back. And it's how you essentially conduct yourself as a servant leader so that the benefit of the company and the team comes before your own, I guess, incentives. But humble can also mean that you don't sit back. I work with a lot of people, and Brian knows this. I'll challenge people that are too quiet in meetings, or I don't think are giving back of their God-given talents enough. I actually think that's a form of not being humble. If you're not participating in ways that you're talented to be able to make a difference, well then, let's get going. You have skills that we need in the equation. And then the last is smart. And smart is about EQ. It is about, it's about the way you get people to follow as a leader, right? Sometimes you can be extremely active and you look backwards and there's a wake behind you, but nobody's following. But, smart in Lencioni's mind is as a leader, you look back and people they're with you, right? They're right there. And so I've asked our leadership team, and I'm sure other leaders have read the book. It's sold probably millions of copies. But to just, when they're interviewing people to join our cause at Winnebago Industries, are they hungry, are they humble, and are they smart? And again, a little bit like our acquisition list of three boxes, if we can check the box on those three things, when Brian adds somebody to his corporate finance team, then I think more times than not, that's going to be a good addition to our culture.
Yeah.
And yes, we'll want their technical experiences, but gosh dang it, if we're going to build a great company and they're hungry, humble, and smart, that'll go a long ways.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And I know several of our leaders at Winnebago have taken that and have had their teams read the book as well and consider that framework for the broader culture. And our finance team, many of the leaders here today, have done just that. So we're running short on time, I know, and I want to keep some time for Q&A. But just briefly, let's touch on the financial metrics and some of the change in those metrics we've seen in the 3 years. Sales, income, cash flow, market share. Maybe talk just briefly about those, because it's a good story.
Brian's our chief financial officer, so he should be the one talking. And Brian, as you guys may know, Brian left a 21-year career at Ecolab, which is an awesome company here in Minnesota as well. And I think and I hope Brian came to Winnebago for many of the same reasons that I described, but it is so comforting, and we have some other members of Brian's team here with us this morning. So comforting to have folks from his area be able to manage these numbers for us. One of the challenges I've given Brian is in finance, don't just be a scorekeeper, be a score maker. Help us put points on the board as someone in leading that area. And I think with your leadership, we're starting to do that. But key financial metrics, we're in the early innings of, I think, going from good to great. And we're fortunate our revenues have doubled, more than doubled. Our adjusted EBITDA is probably 2.5 to 3 times greater today from a dollar standpoint than it was when I arrived at the company. We as you know, we track ROE and ROIC, and those have both headed the right direction. When you make acquisitions, sometimes those can take a temporary detour while you're funding that acquisition, but usually they'll come back if you made the right acquisition. We think about working capital and free cash flow and net working capital, and how we're, as an industrials company, we have a lot of steel and metal and rubber and all sorts of components, refrigerators and TVs and couches, sitting around, and that's all cash. And so I think about it from top line, from bottom line, from asset management, the returns, certainly market share, customer satisfaction. Those are the things that I think make up sort of our balanced scorecard. But we also track employee engagement. In March of this last year, 2018, we did the first ever employee engagement survey in the history of the company. And it was humbling. Yeah. And you know this, Brian, but it was quantitative, but it was also qualitative. And I spent an entire weekend reading almost 800 verbatim responses from our employees as to how we can be a better company. And let's just say most of them were perfect. It was a hard read. And so, so that's kind of our balanced scorecard. But we're very pleased that I think we're in a financially sound place today. Brian's doing a great job with Bert managing our balance sheet, so that we can stay, liquid and have access to liquidity in a cyclical market when we need it. But we're making good progress. As a public company, you're not always rewarded. Our stock price was $16.67 on the day I joined. It raced to $58. It dropped to $19, and now we're at $33. So if anybody's got Dramamine in the audience, that would be wise to take. But if we do the right things, the market will reward us over time. And I think that's what Brian and I and the team at Winnebago are committed to doing. And I think the last comment I'll make before we head into Q&A is, one thing that we changed at Winnebago is when I arrived, 98% of the employees were not owners of the company. I'm a believer that if you're an owner of the company, that you will care more, that you will spend our money like it's your own, hopefully, and that you will enjoy the fruits of the labor. And it's not just the executives that are getting these stock packages, but our employees should gain. And so we introduced an employee stock purchase program, had to be approved by our shareholders. And we gifted each employee $250 of stock on day one of that program. And then when the Tax Cut and Jobs Act was passed last year, we gave each employee $1,000, $500 in cash and $500 in stock. And so now most of our employees are owners. They can choose to sell it and not be owners someday, but I want them to be owners, not just employees. They're teammates. They're owners of our business. So that's how we're going to motivate change in the future, or a part of the way. So.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Mike. Kristen, Eric, I'll turn it to you guys to guide us through some Q&A. Any questions? Raise your hand.
Anyone have their hand? Are you ready?
It sounds like it's working. Is it working?
Yeah.
Okay, you mentioned a lot of steel in your company, so obvious question, but I want to ask it anyway, is the impact of tariffs on your business?
So the question's around tariffs and the impact on, from some of the materials. So we use a lot of steel and aluminum. The good news and the bad news, I guess. The good news is we source 98% of that from domestic sources. The bad news is that it didn't matter. When the tariffs went in place, the global pricing umbrella lifted almost day one. Our aluminum prices went up 40% quickly. So we've worked on ways. Chris West is one of our leaders on the manufacturing and supply chain side. He's here today. He and his team have done a tremendous job working with suppliers to try to slow those costs down and mitigate them. But we've probably spent $30 to $40 million just on tariff increases alone in the past couple of years. And probably in fiscal 19, which we're halfway through, it's another $10 to $15 million. So they're real. We believe in the desire to have fair trade. I'm not a big believer in restricting global trade, but I believe in fair trade. I think the tariffs, I understand the reason why you might consider using them, but we took the proverbial sledgehammer to the fly. I would have preferred we kind of would have used a scalpel as we're trying to negotiate some of these fair trade agreements. So.
My question is, how diverse is Winnebago Industries, both racially and gender-wise, with regards to your employees and executive leaders? And is there anything the company is doing to encourage diversity?
Yeah, great question. And I'm brave enough to say that we're not diverse enough. That is one of the areas of opportunity that we have at Winnebago. We are just now beginning to track, and I say just now, we've been doing it for several years now, but we're tracking diversity and we're starting to set goals around what we want to be. The whole idea of corporate social responsibility, I would say, has been immature at Winnebago. And I want to say that respectfully, for past leaders of the company, but we've not spent a lot of time thinking intentionally about diversity. And where we've had our facilities in North Iowa and Northern Indiana, I would say the ability to choose from a broad, diverse population has been limited as well, but that is no excuse. And we are now starting to really dive into that topic with our board to determine the actions we need to take. So the answer to your question, I don't have the stats on top of my head, but we're actually, as you know, we've got a board meeting in a couple weeks, and we'll be showing the board our diversity statistics. They vary by location, but they're not strong enough. And so we have to work in partnership with our human resources team to first and foremost recruit a diverse set of candidates, first, and then hopefully you find diverse candidates with the talents and skills, that you need. And there's a number of topics around corporate social responsibility, diversity, sustainability, giving back to the community that we can be a whole lot better at. And I hope and I know that it'll be part of our transformation. And as a leader, I have to send a top-down message that is important, and then hold myself and others accountable for making sure that happens over time. And so thank you for your question. We are not where we need to be, and I would not lift us up right now as a good example. We have lots of work to do there.
We have time for maybe one more question. If you have one there, great. Here we go.
The number 3 strategic objective I think you had when you got hired was to diversify, and certainly in the towable segment you're doing really well there, and you've taken a big leap into that. You did buy another brand in the Chris-Craft, which is a different kind of diversification strategy. But can you talk a little bit more about what you might be able to do organically or through acquisitions as far as diversification?
Yeah, thank you for the question and for mentioning Chris-Craft. So, our portfolio in January of 16 was kind of a one-legged, stool. I don't know what you call it. I mean, that was part of the challenge of the company, but 93% of our revenue was motorhomes. In a recession or in an RV downturn, motorhomes go backward an average of 20 to 25%. So we now have a portfolio that now has RVs, motorhomes, and towables, 2 brands, Winnebago and Grand Design. We have started a journey into marine. And marine's not counter-cyclical, so let's be clear about that. It's actually quite similar. But the golden thread there is that it's family and friends in the outdoors having great experiences, and we believe there are secular tailwinds to the marine industry growing to being more mainstream, just like we think the RV industry is. And so we did acquire Chris-Craft in June of 2018. It is the Aston Martin of the boat business. It is awesome. 144-year-old brand, and they make the most beautiful boats in the world, 20 to 40-foot fiberglass stern drive and outboard boats. We will look for other opportunities in marine very carefully, but we believe we can also create a portfolio there. We've set up a specialty vehicles business, and we're focused on electric vehicles, mobile medical, not ambulances and fire trucks, but dental clinics, imaging, blood mobiles. We think care is going to be brought to the masses, right, as opposed to you all having to go to the clinic. And then the third element to specialty vehicles is accessibility enhanced. We just introduced our first line of RVs where someone who's bound to a wheelchair can enjoy the RV lifestyle. And you literally see people weep, and I'm not kidding, cry because they've never been in an RV before, because they couldn't get in the door. There wasn't a lift. So we now have 3 models that you can enjoy the lifestyle. So RVs, marine, specialty vehicles, and then there's an other on the chart that I think someday will be around aftermarket or solutions of some sort, and or another outdoor lifestyle. So we are not precise yet, but we are on the look, for other markets, industries, even geographic areas around the globe to try to expand our business to, so that we're more robust and resilient in times of difficulty, but that we also have a path to creating a more profitable company in the future. I want investors and employees, right, prospective employees, I want them to look at us and go, that's a company with a strong future. They've got a lot to work on, but my gosh, look at that roadmap. They know where they're going. They know what they want to be. And so we're starting to put that together. And so Chris Craft was the first journey outside of non-RVs. And Brian and I have both spent significant time around that business. We're taking our board to Sarasota next week to visit the plant. So we'll see how it goes, right? Check back with us in a few years, see where we're at. So.
Yeah, but it's another $10 billion market that we just entered, 10 plus.
More
that's
than
North America,
yeah,
and then globally.
I think it's 35 billion, even potentially all in. And
Yeah.
so anyway, I know we're wrapping it up, but I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to tell our story. And I think it's tremendous to hear what's going on both within the business school, but also Concordia as a whole. And you have some friends of Concordia, certainly, and Brian and myself at Winnebago. And again, Brian's doing a tremendous job as our CFO, and we just appreciate the opportunity this morning to be here. Thank you so much. So,
Thanks, Chris.
On behalf of Concordia College and the Offutt School of Business, let me express great thanks for Mike and Brian in your discussion. It's one of those times where there were so many things that connected with what we do at Concordia in your discussion. Anyone would be excited about return on invested capital, EBITDA, economic value added. All that stuff is phenomenal. But when we hear about values-based education, about experiential learning, about engagement for employees. In our case, it's student engagement. And what better training to be a great CEO more than a journalism major? You both didn't realize it, but this is all being recorded. As you knew, it's going to be on our website. You gave a great example and why liberal arts is an education that is here to stay, because it's really what we're based on in Concordia as well. So on behalf of Mike's interest and in honor of his generous time, we made a gift to Voyager Outward Bound School, located in Texas and Minnesota, and they believe in the potential of every individual changing lives through challenges and discovery by offering life-changing experiences. So we thought that was a great connection to what we do and obviously what's going on at Winnebago as well. Many people have helped to put this on. Carol Hedberg, who's in the audience somewhere, she does a great job as our event planner to do this. If you have ideas for future events, please let us know. Drop your business card in the back table. And finally, we invite you to join us on October 31st, 2019, where we'll be at the Millennium Hotel downtown Minneapolis, and Andrea Walsh, President and CEO of Health Partners, will be with us. We look forward to seeing you there, and I know another great conversation. So thank you for coming, and have a great day.